Ancient Egypt stood strong for over 2.5 millenniums. Not only did their civilization create the iconic pyramids and Sphinx of Egypt, but they also brought to the world controlled irrigation, boats, and even some of the earliest examples of literature and mathematics. While the ancient Egyptians achieved many great things, some of their beliefs and practices were downright shocking. I'm Jake the Voice Parr, and these are 10 facts you probably didn't know about the ancient Egyptian Empire. In Egypt, being a slave was not as tough as it sounded. Contradictory to popular belief, no one was forced to construct the Great Pyramids. In actuality, slaves could marry freely, own land, employ servants, and more. It is thought that slaves made up about 4/5 of the population. The definition of a slave has changed over time, but back then they were pretty much hired for the job, which in many ways is similar to the state of workers today. One of the most embarrassing jobs was the royal backside wiper. Although pharaohs were deemed gods by their people, so to wipe the bottom of a god was an honor indeed. Still, it's certainly not the kind of part-time job you would want to get your hands dirty in. What happens when you die? You go to the afterlife, according to the Egyptians, though the last thing you want to do is to go unprepared. When members of royalty or the wealthy passed on, their organs were removed and stored in jars to be buried alongside their mummified corpses, which preserved their bodies. All of their worthy possessions went into their tomb, from furniture and clothing to toilets. Their beloved pets were put 6 feet under, so neither would be lonely after reincarnation. As for the servants, while most pharaohs took small models of them, some of them were knocked out and buried alive alongside their masters. Credit where due for their emphasis on preparation. Honey makes a great addition to a bowl of porridge. It's packed with simple sugars, a slightly healthier alternative to the stuff you get from sugar canes, reduces the risk of certain cancers and heart disease, and strengthens the immune system. The ancient Egyptians used it as a medicine and to catch bugs. The Egyptians were particularly experimental with testing medicines. One effective treatment for sealing a burn was to smear the wound in honey. Once the honey dries, its antibacterial content combines with the simple sugars and commences the healing process. Studies have shown that it works just as well as your average burn cream. Pharaoh Pepi II had an odd solution for catching irritating bugs. He surrounded himself with a few slaves and smothered them with honey in order to catch the pesky bugs. One just had to put those excess slaves to good use after all. Speaking of Pepi II, after he got into power at age 6, he requested a dwarf as a gift. Luckily, he got exactly what he wanted when a caravan leader by the name of Harkuf managed to find one during his adventures in Africa. Pepi was only 9 when he got his gift. He wrote to Harkuf stating how the dwarf would please the land and strongly emphasized that his gift needed to be supervised at least 10 times at night while he slept. Harkuf had Pepi's message engraved on his tomb. Sounds like he really wanted to boast, even after death. While camels can store excess water in their humps for long periods of time, Egyptians did not use them for travel. Instead, they used donkeys. They were incredibly important when it came to farming. Donkeys were not deemed symbols of high status, hence why they were scarcely portrayed in Egyptian art. On the other hand, they were of great importance economically and were kept in good condition. Archaeologists in 2012 discovered donkeys were even buried within their own personal graves. The nickname for a donkey, an ass, is a somewhat rude insult these days. It was even the case back then. According to inscriptions of Egyptian texts, one person wrote this about a lazy scribe. "Thou art like an ass in taking beatings." Ooh, harsh. For decades, civilizations believed that a tooth worm would chew through the root canal of a tooth and consequently give a person toothache. The Egyptians' solution was rather unpleasant. Place a freshly slain rat on the affected gums, likely to attract the fictional toothworm to the fresh meat balancing between the person's gums. When it came to dental hygiene between 3500 to 3000 BC, the Egyptians fashioned brushes out of twigs to scrub their teeth with. As for toothpaste, they crushed and mixed about 4 grams of dried iris flour, 4 grams of rock salt, 20 grains of pepper, and 8 grams of mint. According to dentist Heinz Newman, who said in 2003 that this was an advanced formula for its time, quote, "It was painful on my gums and made them bleed as well, but that's not a bad thing, and afterwards my mouth felt fresh and clean." Nasty, but effective. The iconic pharaoh Tutankhamun was a big fan of hunting. He didn't chase deer or slay crocodiles. Actually, he loved to hunt ostriches. According to the engravings on his tomb, Tutankhamun would travel to the now ancient city of Heliopolis, northeast of modern-day Cairo, to chase down and slay ostriches in his chariot. This was a sport worthy of royalty, and ostrich eggs and feathers were deemed luxurious. In fact, his tomb was decorated with these feathers. This was a dangerous sport, though. Some Egyptologists speculate Tutankhamun might have died from a broken leg from a hunting accident. Egyptian doctors strongly relied on their textbooks. After diagnosis, they would read recommended cures for certain ailments. Some historians say that a portion of their cures were actually quite effective, despite their limited understanding of illness and diseases at the time. Not all of them worked, though. On the contrary, many of them did little to help. Some of the more disgusting remedies include a mashed pig's eye, which was used to cure blindness, described as an excellent remedy from the scriptures, bird's blood mixed with flies, honey and fruit to be smothered on a swelling on the neck, mixtures of animal feces and wounds, and so on. Some medicines were administered with laxatives to help their patients purge their bodies of the illness. To help cope, the sick were usually given beer or wine with their medicine, which was deemed beneficial for their health. The mummified remains of the Egyptians were seldom left to rest in peace. Since adventurers were finding so many of their preserved corpses, they decided to put them to other uses. The last thing that the Egyptians would have expected their bodies to have been used for included stage props, medicine, which was good for the blood according to the 14th century merchants, interior decorations, and even as part of a party game. Unwrap the mummy's bandages. In retrospect, it's not like they would have minded. Contraception was deemed taboo for long periods of time by many cultures, but not so with the Egyptians. It was said that their civilization used condoms made of either oily linen or sheep intestine around the mid-14th century BC. These are some of the earliest known examples of contraception in history. Almost 4 millenniums ago, women were administered pastes made of crocodile and elephant feces mixed with honey, dates, and other fruits, which was smeared deep within their genitals. This revolting bacteria-ridden mess was thought to prevent unwanted childbirth. Those then are 10 facts you probably didn't know about the Egyptian Empire. For more top lists just like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out our other top lists. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks for learning.